Good Gentiv. Most of you are familiar with the idea that when we build a sukkah, what we are building is a temporary dwelling, and we're trying to show that we don't rely on ourselves for protection, but we're open to the elements and we're always in need of God's special assistance to make sure that our lives go according to plan. And that's why the schach, the roof, is left open to a certain degree that it allows the rain and the elements to come in. What's really still questionable is if that's what the sukkah is all about, what about the walls of the sukkah? So for that, I'd like to just use the commentary of Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who explains it in the following way. There's two parts to the sukkah. There are the walls and the schach and the roof. The walls could be made of any kind of permanent type of material. You could put cement, you could put steel bars, bricks, anything you want. You have to have it that there at least will stand up with a ruach mitzuya, a normal average wind, and it shouldn't be moving around. And even therefore, if you put some kind of flimsy material, it should be held down, that it shouldn't be flapping too much in the wind. But other than that, it could be of a permanent nature. So the question is, why is that allowed to be of a permanent nature, but not the schach? And he answers quite simply that there are two parts to our lives. There's the part that we rely on God, which is hashgacha. We rely on God's providence to make sure that our lives go well and are not disturbed by any kind of terrible tragedy or unknown event. And then there's our own, what we call in Hebrew, hishtadlut. It's our own work and our own efforts to make sure that our lives go according to plan. And the message of Sukkot is, as we said, is to make sure that we don't think kochi v'otzim yadi asali esachayil hazeh, that our own power and strength have made for us these armies, and our strength and our military, or creating a situation for us to live in peace and to make sure that we have parnasa, that we have some kind of livelihood. But what the sukkah is trying to do is tell us that, on the one hand, we have an obligation to create for ourselves some permanence as much as possible. There's a minimum amount that we have to put up. The walls are that minimum amount. We only have to put up 2 walls and 1 tefach, about 3 inches. So it's a majority of the surrounding walls that we would normally have in a dwelling. You don't even have to put up 3 or 4 walls, just 2 and a little bit. So you're obligated to at least afford yourself a majority of your protection. And the strength that it has to have is to make sure it can withstand a normal wind. In other words, if you are saying, I'm relying on God and I'm not worrying about anything, I have bitachon, I have faith in God and trust in God, that's wrong. God says, no, you're obligated to make sure that you work and you take care of yourself. So you can't just rely on God. You have to have at least a minimum. You don't necessarily have to do the maximum, but you have to do the minimum. The minimum is a majority of the protection. And it has to stand up to normal weather conditions and normal natural conditions that will affect you through your life. But you could put as much as you want. You could put 4 walls, which most of us do. You can make sure there's proper doors and windows and that they're closed and that you're protected from the elements. You could put up heating. You could put up air conditioning if you live in a hot climate. You could do whatever you want, but you have to make and you have to make sure that the schach is open to the elements, that the schach is not protecting completely, that there's still, no matter how much you work to protect yourself, nature still could attack you, and you still need to rely on God for His protection. And it's also giving us a very simple message that no matter how wealthy you are, no matter how strong you are, no matter how much work you put in, you never really could depend on yourself. You think you're building walls of concrete and steel and they'll withstand anything, but there's always something that could happen. There's nothing that we can do that could protect us from every and any type of situation that might occur. So it's a very simple message. It's a message that's telling us that this is a holiday of simcha, of we're supposed to be always joyful and full of happiness, and we're supposed to celebrate before God. We're actually in the time of the temple making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem to celebrate at the temple with community as a whole. So we're very happy. We have to work on whatever we can do for ourselves, but always remember that part of it is that we rely on God. And just like God, as we're told, protected us in the desert with the cloud of glory in the day and the pillar of fire at night, even though today we don't see that obvious hand of God, and we go through the normal human requirements of protecting ourselves and making sure that we satisfy all of our physical needs, we always have to remember that God is one of the elements that we have to rely on and pray to and hope that God will fulfill our needs. Have a very good Yom Tov.